back to my channel. So I was thinking about the topic I wanted to discuss today, given that I am still completely deep in con crunch mode, and I realized I was doing a lot of work on accessories for Ravenna, and I decided that I wanted to share with you some of my key tools for finishing a 3D print or a Worbla piece. In the judging room, I have seen many times an unfinished 3D print or Worbla that was not properly primed, and that does take away from the finishing of a cosplay build. So I wanted to share with you what I expect to see as a judge and what I use to get there for my own competition builds. So as always, if you like this video, hit the like button. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them down in the comment section below, and subscribe for more content from me. So with that, let's go ahead and hop on into it. So I am mostly a seamstress. Sewing is what I am best at, it's what I enjoy the most, and it's what I focus on when competing. However, there are plenty of pieces that require non-sewing techniques, such as using a thermoplastic like Worbla or 3D printing to bring elements into my sewing builds, such as with Ravenna. She has the crown and then this front plate that I made out of Worbla. 3D printing and Worbla, it's just super useful for making your costume as accurate as possible if that is what you are going for. Here's my Ravenna crown. This is my old one. I have a new one that is not quite finished yet, but this is 3D printed. This is a bracer I made many years ago now. It actually was part of a costume that won Best in Show. This is actually made out of Worbla. It's incredibly hard and a little heavy. I love working with Worbla. I know a lot of people prefer to use foam instead because foam is cheaper and you can get very similar looks, but I personally really like Worbla. This is actually a Worbla bracer that I use as an example for my Worbla basics class. So if you're going to be in that class at MomoCon, you can look at this one up close. This is unfinished. It still has that rigidity, but it has a very rough texture. Just so you know, this is like a stained glass idea I had. Eventually I plan to finish it, but I left it unfinished for my class so that we have something to look at how Worbla can be manipulated to make something like armor. This brown part is something called Worbla Finest, which is probably the most popular Worbla they have out there, maybe even their first product. It does have the roughest texture, but I use this as a base for a lot of things. I actually use it for making the under shape of a wig. So I'll like mold it to my head and then put a wig, like sew it to a wig so that the wig keeps its shape and it's more like a helmet type wig. I use it to make jewelry pieces. I use it for structural parts, such as in my Cosmos build, the boots have a big piece of Worbla in them to hold them up since I had to cut them into a weird shape. This black is called Worbla Black. It's actually a little bit smoother than the brown. You can sculpt it a little bit more. It's stretchier and it's actually more adhesive than the brown. And then you have the white, which is the smoothest that they have. You can make nice little sculptural techniques like these roses, and it doesn't require nearly as much priming and finishing to get a nice smooth look. This is Worbla Unfinished, and I don't actually have a 3D print unfinished, but I'm sure we've all seen them. Not resin printers specifically, but like the filament, the plastic filament printers, they leave lines in all of their prints. That's just the nature of a 3D print. And I know that you can purchase colored 3D print filament. You can get it in gold and pink and all sorts of different colors. Outside of maybe the clear 3D print filament, you shouldn't, if you're going to be competing, leave that filament visible. If you need to make a gold crown and you print it out of gold 3D print and then that's it, that crown will not place as high as someone who then sanded, primed, and painted it. Now you can sand 3D prints, and I hear you can get them to nice glossy shine. So if you put that effort into it and don't paint it and it works, then of course you don't have to paint it. But if you leave it just bare like that, even if it's printed in the right colors, as a competition build, it just does not seem as finished or as polished as someone who did take the time to prime and paint it. So I have very special tools that I use to take a lot of the effort out of sanding a 3D print or Worbla. So how do we accomplish this? Actually, it's incredibly easy. I will show you my lazy way of finishing pieces like this. Absolute first thing, of course, particularly with a 3D print, that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to clean off all of the supports. I actually really enjoy a pair of jewelry pliers for that. It has the little needle nose so you can get into all of the little grooves, and it has a cutter here, so anything that's sticking up I can easily just go along the line and cut it. I don't have it with me, but I also use my Dremel. Particularly, I think it's called the Dremel pin, which is really lightweight. So I do like a very rough removal of the supports that come off easily, and then using a Dremel with a stone tip, particularly one that has a bit of a point to it, I'm able to go in, just pop off all the other supports and any other little plastic flaws that happened during the prints, and clean up some edges and that sort of thing. About the amount of sanding that I do on the 3D print itself before priming it is with that Dremel, and I don't typically do a lot. It's just to clean up the filament and any sort of like little plastic flaw that is very easy to take off with a Dremel. I'm not worried about the lines at this point. I do know that you can sand the lines here, but I find that to be an incredible effort or time suck that I just really don't want to put into it. So the next thing that I do is my cheaty way of finishing everything, and I use this Rust-Oleum primer. It is a 2-in-1 primer, specifically 2-in-1. They have several cans at Walmart and at Lowe's that look a lot like this, but I specifically go for the one that says 2-in-1. It is a filler that has little particles of something in it that go into all of the grooves and fill in things like scratches. This is actually made for cars. If you get a scratch on your car, you're supposed to be able to put this on there and sand it down, and it'll fill in that scratch for you so you can then paint over it and have a nice smooth finish. So if it works for cars, it can definitely work for a 3D print or Worbla. So I do a light coat of this first, let everything settle. The idea with this is that it will sink into the lines of the 3D print, or in the case of Worbla, it's filling in the little dips between the textured pieces. I do a light coat of this, and then I do exactly what the instructions say not to do. My second coat is incredibly heavy. I put a ton of this on it, but I do it in a way to try and keep it from getting drips. And then I let that dry for about a day. Typically you can sand it within a couple of hours, but because it's so thick, I just want to make sure that it is thoroughly dry before I sand it. Just so you know, because this has particles and whatnot in it, you have to wear a respirator when using this. This is terribly bad for your lungs. You don't want whatever is filling in the cracks on your print or Worbla to be going into your lungs. So always wear a respirator. But this is found in the automotive section at Walmart, just so you know. You won't find it with the spray paints, but at Lowe's it is in the spray paint aisle. So once I have my 2 coats of primer on, I actually pull out one of my favorite tools to use, and it's this. This is a sanding block, I think. It's at Walmart. It's in the painting section, but it comes on like a little cardboard thing, and it's hanging up on a peg. I don't know what this thing is called, which is why I'm being so descriptive about how to find it. But this has the best shape of any sort of sanding sponge that I've ever used, and it's denser than any other sanding sponge I've used. It's very comfortable to hold, and because of how dense it is, it diffuses the amount of pressure that I put into sanding just beautifully. But this is the best thing I've had, and it has interchangeable sanding strip. It comes with a bunch in 3 different grits, so I love using this, but I will say that the sanding strips do fall apart quite quickly because the primer has to be wet sanded. The water does eventually make the glue fail that's holding the Velcro to the sand paper, but you can take any sandpaper and rip it into strips and wrap it around so you hold that in place and use it the exact same way. So I love this tool. Now, what I do at this point is, after my primer has dried, it should have filled in quite a bit of space at this point, filled in a lot of the 3D print lines. On the Worbla, it's filled in the texture. I take this, starting with a slightly coarser grit or maybe a medium grit, depending on how the primer dried, and I just go and lightly smooth out any line that I see. If I happen to get a little drip of the primer, I smooth that out and go around the edges to make sure everything is smooth. I don't really have to spend that much time doing this though, because the primer does most of the work. Now on Worbla, the way the primer sinks into the texture, it can also appear to then be textured because it did sink into the texture but also built up on to the higher parts of it. So I do typically go in with a mid-grit sandpaper and sand everything down lightly once. You can't really see how the primer looks at this point until it is dry again, so I let it completely dry and take a look and then decide from there if I need another coat of primer or not. And I will do that as many times as needed until it is completely smooth. And it's something I call glass smooth. This primer, when you switch to a finer grit sandpaper, you can sand it to a point where it is shiny. It's glass smooth is what I call it. That is the point I try to get to. It does not take too much effort from sanding, which is why I like this primer so incredibly much. You don't have to get it to that point to still get a beautiful finish, because the paint will then smooth out any of the slightly matte texture that you get, but I really enjoy getting that glass smooth texture if I'm going for something that is metal, which is what I did here, and that is why it is so incredibly smooth. So once you smoothed everything out and it's to this beautiful prime state, what do we do next? It's time to paint. I almost always spray paint everything because of how smooth the spray paint is when you put it down, as well as how quick it dries. I do sometimes go in and add details with airbrushing, but in the case of this Ravenna crown, I only did spray paint. This is spray paint, and then the shadows are added in with airbrushing. So you can do it however you want. I just really find that at least one coat or two of spray paint really make sure everything is smooth. I'll share with you a couple favorites of mine. One of my most used spray paints is Rust-Oleum, particularly their metallic finish. This is the best metallic spray paint I have ever run across. It sprays on and looks like liquid metal. It dries, it looks like liquid metal. I love this spray paint so much. It is on this crown in silver, but I dulled it up a bit using a enamel on top of it. That is the downside of this. If you spray any protectant on it, doesn't matter what kind, you can get glossy enamel, satin, it does not matter. It will take that beautiful silver shine and turn it into something dull. But I wanted that for this crown, so that is what I did, and it became this dull silver. Now it is just the highlights on this one. This has a gunmetal silver on it as well, so this is not an accurate representation of what the silver looks like. I will put a picture or video of my Ravenna bone crown, which I recently painted. It is painted with this Rust-Oleum metallic finish. They have it in silver, there's a copper, there's a gold, there's a bunch of different colors in this, but specifically look for the metallic finish. And if you're looking to keep that beautiful metallic shine, then I recommend using it on pieces that don't need any sort of protectant on it. And finally, my favorite enamel protectant that I put on top of most of my 3D prints or my Worbla pieces is this Rust-Oleum satin clear enamel. This is incredibly durable. It will really protect your paint job, but the downside is that it does dull down any sort of metallic. So if you're not using metallic, it's perfect, but if you are using any sort of metallic, this will dull its beautiful shine. And I just bought a new can yesterday, and all of Rust-Oleum products have added this nozzle, which has 5 different spray settings, which is super cool because that gives you incredible control over the spray paint itself and the amount that's going on there. I did just put it on the standard setting because it's what I'm used to for now, but there's 4 other things for me to experiment with on my next build. But this is what I used on my armor here, and you can see it just took down that gloss because this was sprayed in a shiny metallic bronze color, and then I sprayed it with a satin enamel, and we've got the color dulled down to where I wanted it to be. So this paint is not going anywhere. It actually took quite a lot of effort to chip it down here. It fell off a shelf a couple of times actually, and it finally took a chip out, but the rest of it is nice. This paint is not flexible, so only use it on pieces that you do not need to bend. So it's perfect for Worbla and 3D prints. If you're using foam, I do not recommend it on foam. Actually, most spray paint doesn't work on foam anyway because it'll eat away the foam. So those are my key tips and products that I use to finish my prints. If you are planning to compete, please keep in mind to remove that 3D print texture as well as that texture on Worbla. I see a lot of beautiful builds out of Worbla, and then as soon as the light hits it, I see that texture and I'm like, no, they didn't prime it. They should have smoothed out all that texture. It doesn't matter, of course, if that's what you're going for or you really don't care about it, but if you are competing, you do need a smooth finish because that texture showing through can take away from your overall score. So that is all I have for today. I hope you find this video helpful. Make sure to hit the like button if you like this video. Make sure to subscribe for more content from me, and I will see you in my next video. And for those going to MomoCon, I might see you at MomoCon.